Good evening, one and all. Thank you for coming to the Bennington Select Board meeting. It's Monday, September 24th. We're convening here at the Bennington Fire Facility. I'm Tom Jacobs, Chair of the Select Board. And before we start, maybe the other folks can introduce themselves. Nancy Lively is our reporter. Thank you very much, Nancy. Carson.
Good evening, Chad Gordon.
Hello, Jeannie Jenkins.
I am Mike List, but I'm Donald Campbell.
It's okay.
I'm Jim
Carroll.
Hi, I'm Jean Connor.
I'm Stu Hurd, and Stu Hurd as well. As we start our meetings, Donald, could you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can share the mic. Okay, we have the consent agenda containing the minutes of the September 10th and the September 12th meetings respectively, as well as the warrants which have been circulated, reviewed, and I have signed anticipating the decision of the board. Carson is, by the way, running late. If he can make it, he's in Albany at a meeting, and if you try to come up Hoosick Street at any time in Troy, it's bad enough when they're not ripping it up. But anyway, he might make later part of the meeting. So could I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion. Second.
Discussion on the consent agenda.
So we just made some corrections on people's names.
Okay. Names, that's great. And without further ado, unless there's further discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by aye.
Aye.
I will abstain from the September 12th, 2018 meeting, which I did not attend. So the record will be all in favor, 6 in favor of the other minutes and the warrants, and 5 in favor of the September 12th. Okay, as we always have, we have a 15-minute public comment period, and appreciate your citizens' comments, and the sign-up sheet has been circulated, and Representative Morrissey.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mary.
I'm sorry to be in front of you on this topic again, but I'm here on behalf of the folks on the Harwood Hills side of that were not included in the special meeting of almost 2 weeks ago on Wednesday. The public hearing was held at Bennington College, and it was in regards to, on the website, it talked about the Apple Hill and Chelsea and related projects. I have gotten, the reason I'm here this evening is I've gotten several calls from individuals that are property owners up in that neck of the woods, and that have had Mr. Wilson calling them to see if he can at this point come onto their property to take pictures of the solar sites that is being proposed. I believe that at the meeting and what was discussed was that the town of Bennington was going to pick a non-biased aesthetic analysis person, 3 of them, with the Malones who were going to be paying for it. So first of all, has that already been done? And has anyone been chosen or the analysis been done?
I think probably Donald can first take first run.
Stuart, unless there's something that you have to report on that I don't know of, I don't know that any work has been done on picking the 3 aesthetic analysis.
Yeah, I don't know that the selection has been made. 3 corporations were offered to the Alco, the Malone family. I don't know that they've made a choice at this point.
So the town, we did offer them our 3 representatives?
Yes.
Okay, I was not aware of that, and I don't know who they are, so I'll have you talk to Stuart about that.
So were people going to be notified of the process, how this is rolling out? Because I've got folks who are concerned with how this has gone down, because the analysis was supposed to decide whether this non-preferred site, which is in the town plan, all of a sudden becomes a preferred site based upon this analysis report. So I'm not quite sure why Mr. Wilson would be wanting to take pictures from BPI, Public House, the motel, Joe Krosick's property. And so I got calls indicating that what's going on, we're getting these calls to come onto the property, and we had no notice and have no idea of what went on at that special meeting. Now, the folks that responded, or that called and responded, Joe Krosick did not receive a notice, nor did any of his brothers, but his brothers may not be a budding property owner, so they may not have been. Public House did not receive it, nor did BPI. These are all people that have been requested. Harwood Hill Motel is here tonight, and they'll talk as well in what they got. But if a notice, and I was assured at the meeting, because that was a question I asked, it was the last question of the night, that were these people notified, because I said, if you are having a public hearing, it is very important that the people it affects are at least able to have the opportunity to speak about what their concerns are. And I was assured by you, Stuart, that that had been done, and yet all these folks are saying they didn't receive it. Now, if indeed a notice did go out, which no one's received, if it was what was on the website indicated it was Apple Hill and Chelsea and other related issues. These folks would have had no idea even that they were part of it, because let us also remember Battle Creek 2 and 3 are now being called Stark and Warner, just in case we could confuse the issue any more than it already is. So could someone explain what is actually going on here?
Well, actually, the notice was sent, I believe, to the Harwood Hill folks, because they have been very much in attendance at all of the meetings and very concerned. And I believe there was an attempt to reach the Public House. I can't say whether it happened or not, because I didn't do it, but the staff were directed to try to do the best they could to get that notice to those people. We did not notify every abutting property owner, because we've not had comments from every abutting property owner on those particular projects. And recall that the agreement that the Select Board entered into was to provide 3 disinterested aesthetic consultants. The solar folks would get to select from that, and that those persons, whoever is selected, would be asked to make an opinion on whether or not the proposal as submitted to them met the preferred site's criteria, which means it can be entirely screened from adjoining properties with natural screening, not supplemental screening. And we have moved, obviously, we have provided them with 3 consultants.
Could you tell us who the consultants are and out of where in Vermont?
Oh dear. There was a company from Saratoga. This was handled by council, so I can't tell you what the Saratoga company's name was, but it was a company that has done absolutely no business with Alco. An individual who had done some work for the Public Service Department, I think it's Ellen Gressing was one of the consultants. Yes.
Ellen?
I think, I'm sure of the Ellen part. And VHB out of Burlington.
VHB?
It's, yeah, Van Housen and Buren or something along those lines, that has done some work in the public service arena, but not for Alco. So those were the consultants that we provided to them. I don't know that they've made a decision. I have not heard that.
And Ellen's last name was what?
I think it's, Dan can tell me. I know Dan's, pardon me? Vissering? Gene Vissering. Thank you, Dan.
And so we don't know if one has been chosen at this point?
We don't. And I imagine what Brad is out there doing is obviously trying to put together a packet of information they can supply the consultant that will show that those sites should be considered preferred sites. And I would expect that that work would be ongoing.
Well, for most of these people that have no idea what happened in the special meeting or thereafter, this is very concerning because they really didn't have an opportunity to be able to speak at what was called a special hearing that affects them dramatically.
I thought the banner covered the meeting pretty thoroughly.
And not everyone reads the banner?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure the banner is too.
Well, I'm sorry for that as well, but not everyone does, unfortunately.
Is there anything more to add to this?
I don't think there's anything more, Mary. I apologize that I didn't have the correct answer for you on the 3 consultants, but it looks like Stuart did, and it sounds like they were done through counsel, right?
Yes.
Through our legal counsel?
That's correct.
So he must have spoken to the people that we felt would...
All 3 were vetted by council before the names were turned over, because obviously they have to agree to the process. We have had some experience with VHB. They are engineers for us on our rail trail. And Dan is nodding yes. But that is our work has not been in the solar field, but apparently they have testified before the PSB in the past. The Saratoga firm has had really, I'm told, no experience in Vermont. And then as the last individual has actually testified on behalf of the Public Service Department.
And do we have an understanding when this person or group will be chosen?
Timeline, I have no idea of telling. That's going to be really determined by the developer when they put together their packet, when they select their particular consultant. We'll know through council when they do, but we're not, the staff is not being involved in that determination. And then it really will be up to the consultant and the developer to work through the process and make a determination. The determination, there will be a final report that will be supplied to the town at the end, and it's going to be a yes, it is a preferred site, or no, it's not. And then we fall into the next step, which is if in fact it is, then effectively they can go forward because it's now determined to be a preferred site under the language that's incorporated in the town plan. If it's not, Alco can still go forward, but now they will be going forward essentially not in conformance with the town plan and the town plan language. And the town most likely will take a position in opposition to that.
And that's likely you would take a position against?
Well, I'm not the select board, but most likely they would, yes. We're going to uphold the town plan. I think that's been stated strongly for a number of times.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I have to end this by saying I think it was unfortunately a disservice to the people it affects upon those properties that surround the now Stark and Warner projects.
Thank you, Mary. Arthur Wiles? Good evening, Martha.
Good evening.
Thank you. W-I-L-E-S.
What?
W-I-L-E-S. I'm someone.
Yes.
Go ahead, Martha.
I'm one of the principal...
Could you just introduce yourself for the record? And
Yes,
your-
I'm
your
Martha
address?
Wiles. I'm one of the principal owners of the Harwood Hill Motel, which is an abutter of the proposed solar development west of Route 7A. So I had 2 reasons for addressing the board. The first is just to express our displeasure at not being actively involved or consulted about the settlement with Alco Ecos. We really didn't know this was going on. My second reason, which I've kind of heard some reassurance today, is to ask for how, like more information, how our interests going to be protected, which Stuart already addressed. Are you guys going to reach out to us in the future to so that we can stay in the loop a little bit better, because we feel really blindsided. So just to go into the meeting a couple weeks ago, we received a notice from Beth Antonioni, who is someone we don't know. We didn't know who this was, of us, and it just said special meeting in the subject line. And this was the afternoon before the meeting was to occur, with a PDF attached that had an agenda line that said Chelsea Solar and related projects. There was nothing in the email itself to alert us, as like the email like that we got, you know, and we all read email, right? We scan it, we see what it's, oh, what is this, a special meeting? And I just see somebody I've never heard of before. By the time we actually looked at the PDF contents, it was too late for us to make arrangements to attend the meeting. As you know, we've got a business we're running 24/7, so it would have taken coverage, which we did not have. So I guess needless to say, given the stakes, we're pretty distressed at receiving such short and cryptic notice from the select board. And I think based on our experience in the past with this issue, we thought a whole understanding had been reached. There was no construction adjacent to our property, and we felt that the select board had been our advocate with regard to the development. It's a development, of course, that concerns us greatly. Given the nature of our business, it could have really serious negative repercussions for us. And the way it was kind of handled made us feel like, well, maybe we're mistaken about that, about the select board's desire to kind of be our advocate. So, and I guess I just add that we've invested a lot in the property since Pamela Corky, my co-owner, bought it 4 years ago. We feel like we've made something beautiful that showcases the art and the sculpture and the culture in Bennington and the natural beauty that we think makes Bennington so distinctive. So we're not prone to stirring up conflict or controversy. That's not something that we're interested in doing. But we did want to just express our dismay at not having more of a voice in the process at this go-round. We still haven't received a copy of the settlement, so we don't really, I just know the rough outlines of what's been discussed today. Basically, that's all I've heard so far. And we don't have a detailed account of what it stipulates. And we would really appreciate in the future kind of being given a little bit more notice. You guys know what time of year it is, and you know how busy we get. So we need a little bit of notice if we're going to be drawn into the process. So, that's it. I don't know.
Thank you for, if I...
Please,
I think I speak for the board, but I certainly speak for myself when I say I'm really sorry about how that must have felt for you. And it was not something that we would have wanted to happen that way, and it's not something we really planned to have happen that way. As you know, the August 30th PUC decision was pivotal for us. We were following, I know this sounds like an excuse, but we were following our council's advice, adhering to it as close as we possibly could. Could we win this, or could we not win this? And we were faced with the town taking on another $10,000 of legal bills. That was kind of the reason to move quickly on it. And so I know it's just money, it's taxpayer money, but
we understand
given the whole context of
it's our money too,
So we feel a pretty serious responsibility. We fought as hard as we could and for as long as we could, according to our council, to the point where it was really in our best interest to find a settlement quickly. And so none of us particularly, I should again not speak for everybody else, but I would say I wasn't particularly happy about the Warner and Stark elements of that, but at its basic level, it didn't change very much because a preferred site would be a preferred site no matter where, according to the town plan language that had been adopted. So if it's fully naturally screened, it would be a preferred site. What they were asking for is a way of figuring out, a third-party way of figuring out, is it fully screened or not? And so I know you know all that, and maybe it's worthless to try to explain it, but I'm just sorry for how it felt. And it was really hard for us not to be able to tell everybody kind of what was going on and what we, everything we wanted to be able to say at that point. But we were at a delicate negotiation point where they could have decided not to sign it. We could have walked away from the situation with no cost recovery for the couple $100,000 we'd put into, you know, trying to fight that up until that point. So we made a really hard decision, and you know, all I can say is I empathize, and whenever we can, speaking for myself, whenever I can, I will be communicating with, and I think the board would like to be communicating with you as much as possible going forward.
And, you know, I'm assuming you guys have our contact information, and, you know, it would be possible to, I mean, we're on the chamber, and, you know, it should be.
We know how to reach you, yeah. Yeah. We know how to reach you if we can, if we're in a situation where we're able to, yeah.
Is the settlement agreement on the website now, or how can the folks?
I don't think we've put the settlement agreement up on the website, but we can certainly get you a copy.
If you would, please.
And Beth Antononi is one of our staff people who handles notices to the various people, and you received the same notice that other people received who had expressed interest in these projects. Yes, it was cryptic, but we were working in a 24-hour window where this was an emergency special meeting by the select board. So once the board decided to meet, we had the next day in order to get those notices out. So it was cryptic, yes, that's what was on the agenda. And it wasn't very clear, probably looking at it from your perspective, that it also included potentially Battle Creeks 2 and 3 or Warner and Stark, but it was all related projects.
Right, but even in the email line of the subject line, I mean, it would have been pretty easy to just said, I mean, we didn't even know it was, you know, from the email itself, we didn't even know it was from Select Board, I mean, because we didn't know her, you know, so it just, I mean, if you got an email in your inbox that said special meeting, what are you going to do with it? I mean, and that's all it says? It doesn't say, oh, you know, I pay attention to this because, you know, we get all kinds of stuff, right? From all kinds of people thinking what they're doing is special.
Yeah, we absolutely get it. And thank you for,
all right.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
comments.
Martha. Appreciate it. Nancy White.
Hi, I'm Nancy White. I've got some questions on the grand list and how property values are being assessed. The grand list this year no longer shows the last time a property was sold and how much it sold for. Why have those two figures been removed?
I have no idea.
Okay, is it possible to get those back in?
I wouldn't say yes to that. We prepared the grand list using a software program that is used by probably 95% of the municipalities in the state. It's the New England Municipal Resource Center. They must comply with whatever state law is. So when there are changes in state law that change the way we present information, we have to change as well. So I don't know that, I don't prepare the grand list. I don't focus in that kind of detail. But if that information has been eliminated, it's because that's what our NEMRAC software allows us to do.
Okay. Stu, I think this probably deserves just a follow-up through the board or otherwise, just so that we can all answer the question beyond Nancy's, because I don't know the answer.
I think it's important that those of us who live in Bennington, especially with all these properties that are going to be changing hands and being sold, we should be able to look and see when the property changed hands last and what was paid for the property.
You can do that, but you almost have to retain like a lawyer to do the title search, and obviously that's more than most of us are interested in doing.
Well, in fact, that information is probably available in the lister's office.
Exactly.
Yeah, just walk down there and ask.
Card.
Yeah.
It's just not published as part of the grand list itself.
In the old days, not that long ago, you could see that, and it was helpful. And maybe there's a reason for not doing it, but well, let's get the answer, and the chief lister can certainly share that with us. Okay?
In looking through the last couple of years of the grand list, it seems like an awful lot of properties are selling for a low price, and they're getting extensive renovations, and when the renovations are complete, the new assessed value doesn't show it. And I made a couple of copies, and it's the affordable housing properties that I looked at first. The Shires housing property on Kerrigan Lane, the assessed value was 400.
You know, I don't think we have time to get into
well,
previous assessments
I'm
and
just
afterwards.
going-
I'm suggesting what you would like to do, if you have a question about prior assessments, improved, renovated, or otherwise, go to the chief lister's office.
But
and
if we're going to be hearing a lot about affordable housing, local homeowners should know that the millions of dollars that went into that property, their property value didn't increase $1 after the renovations were complete.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue the point with you. You certainly have a certain advantage.
But it should be. If
and
you're going to be promoting affordable housing, you have to be fair to the homeowners.
We certainly would be.
If I may, Tom, maybe I can jump in
yeah.
here. Those properties that are acquired and renovated by the Shires Housing through federal and state funds, because they are capped on what they can charge for rents to a degree, their assessments tend to come in lower based on a formula that the state provides. I mean, I can't speak to the individual properties you're talking about because that's not in my purview, but generally, those properties that receive federal funding that are capped and restricted as to who they can rent to or how many units they can offer, are treated slightly differently under a formula that I think is developed by the state of Vermont.
Okay. The last one then, the Star Coast Firehouse, valued at $36,000 after being renovated twice in the last 20 years. How is that possible to have such a low value?
Does the Shires own that?
Shires does own that.
I thought the Arts Group from North Bennington bought it 20 years ago.
VAE did purchase that particular property and has resold it.
For $40,000, correct?
I have no idea. And you're asking me to have a memory of 6,000 property transfers that occurred.
Well, I think it's a shame that the local homeowners are getting taxed left, right, and sideways, and the affordable housing groups aren't paying their fair share.
Well, I think you've heard the response. You may not agree with it, but you're certainly entitled to get a more complete answer from the chief lister on how the grand list is established, and how these Shire properties or the not-for-profit properties are grand listed. And they do have a cap on them by statute. So why don't you get that information? And if not, it's not satisfactory, let us know.
Well, then we should have caps on our private homes, too.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Prospect Mountain Community Ski Area presentation or discussion. We have some folks from Prospect Association, and I think that because one of the board members has a inherent conflict being a member of the association, Donald, if you could step away.
Yeah, I'm not a member, but because I work for the Vermont Land Trust, I'm part of the funding package, so.
Gotcha.
But I will
Thank you.
step away while this is.
Listen intently. And we have Noah Payne, who's here this evening, along with David Newell.
And someone who's young and still thinking.
Yes, that's helpful. And while Dave is sharing that information, the reason the board invited Prospect is that it recently purchased the Prospect Mountain skier. That's okay.
Like I was saying.
Yeah. We've got somebody back in the room who can take care of you. But the reason folks were invited tonight is to talk about the recent acquisition of the Prospect ski area by a not-for-profit 501c3 organization from its owner. The mantra for our board town has been, economic redevelopment and development. And the effort that this association has undertaken is certainly a graphic example of the private sector getting involved and making an impact and basically a resource, investing in a resource that this community has. It's been used by our community for at least 40 to 50 plus years, if not more. And it was in danger of being lost to the community. The association stepped forward and purchased that. I think what I'd like to have, if David, you could just give us some background relative to how the association got involved and Noah's experience up there and otherwise, and we can have just a conversation with the board.
Thank you very much, Tom, and on behalf of the Prospect Mountain Association, we appreciate the invitation to address the Select Board regarding our plans and our recent purchase of the ski area. I'll get into some quick details with you, answering Tom's question, but I thought I'd first bring on Noah Payne, student athlete at Mount Anthony and outstanding member of the Nordic ski team, and have Noah just reflect a little bit on what Prospect means to him and the youth of the community and the overall recreational health of the community.
Great.
Noah?
Noah, would you like to take a run at that?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Noah. I'm on the ski team at Mount Anthony, and I've been skiing at Prospect probably since about second grade. I can remember the first time I ever hopped on skis. I tried desperately to skate ski on a set of classic skis. But that aside, you know, I spend most of my winter up at Prospect, and I'm very excited to see that there's you know, progress being made as far as keeping it in the community. I'm a big advocate of outdoor sports. As many of you may know, I was here a little while back talking about a pump track. You know, I think it's really important to keep these kinds of things, you know, going in towns. This is what keeps young people around. This is what, you know, gets people outside, and I think, you know, projects like this is, you know, what makes a place a really awesome place to live. So, thank you.
And that, right now, besides the ski team or other communities using that resource? Mount Anthony, I expect probably for the most part. But
as far as, I'm sorry.
You mean like, is it used for other recreational activities by yourself or others besides the school?
Well, there's lots of community members who go and ski there. Most of my experience has been in the winter time. I think there's a lot of potential as far as outdoor activities go, especially year-round. I don't know if that answers your question.
Mount Anthony uses it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have your meets that folks come from different places to compete there? Mm-hmm. Good. Good. Maybe, Dave, you could just share why the association got involved, seeing that resource has been there for a number of years.
Happy to do that, Tom, and thank you, Noah, for your comments. We've been working at this for 2+ years, and as Tom said, it was a window of opportunity for the community to secure the future of Prospect and to have it move forward. It's basically a community-owned facility. It's now owned, effective last Wednesday, by the Prospect Mountain Association, which is a 501c3 federally tax-exempt nonprofit. I happen to be the first president of that, and we have 9 directors now who will serve on our board, 5 from our local area and 4 from Williams College. The Prospect is an economic driver for our area, as Tom and also Noah just mentioned. Maybe an asset that's quiet and perhaps behind the scenes a bit. But we have season pass holders from New York, Maine, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Vermont, all of whom will come to our area to enjoy Prospect, dine out, we hope, shop, and some have second homes here. Prospect serves about 2,500 individual folks use it each year in one fashion or another, whether it be young folks like Noah on the ski teams or season pass holders. In addition to Mount Anthony, the Berkshire League has races up there from Massachusetts. We have the Bill Koch Youth Ski League, which is an important youth organization which involves several hundred young folks from our town, Williamstown, and Wilmington. Williams College has its carnival there, and it is now, will be now, the permanent home of Williams College Nordic ski team. We wanted to make sure to secure that for them and for our area. And we have special events up there. We hope to do more. The most recent was the U.S. National Snowshoe Competition, which occurred last February. which brought over 300 competitors to our town in February for that competition. The winter's a good time to bring folks here. Not much happening otherwise, and so we're happy to perform that service. We think it also helps the hospital, which I've heard comments from Tom D. and the colleges in recruiting employees here. It's an asset that we have, a 30K groomed trail Nordic ski area, and folks are interested in that. That helps perhaps make the deal when you're recruiting an employee or a professional to our community. We have partners in this. I mentioned Williams College. The Vermont Land Trust was quite helpful to us in organizing our campaign and assisting us with getting a grant from our third partner, which is the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And if you want to just open those folders I gave you, and you'll see some numbers there. And I have a breakdown of the finances on this project and try to explain what we've raised so far and what we still need. We've just begun our fundraising campaign. Even though we own this now we have to pay for it. The American way, I guess, but it was an opportunity for us to close on the property, which we had to do, as the current owners had already extended the purchase and sale 3 times, and we'd run out the string on that. You see it there, the purchase price was $900,000, and we need another $50,000 for closing costs, plus operating expenses, and closing costs are the usual property transfer tax, among other things, Woodford tax, etc. Total of $950,000. We received those funds, as you see, from the following sources. Williams College generally paid for half of this purchase price. That's not a loan, that's a gift to Prospect Mountain Association. They will in turn raise that from their alumni. We had a mortgage. One of the owners of Prospect, Steve Whittam, took a mortgage for $350,000, which is very kind of him. There's no interest for 6 months on that. Steve's been very helpful in helping us make this happen. Without that, we would not have been able to make this happen. And finally, we had a no-interest loan of $150,000 from the Vermont Land Trust. So we add all that up, we were able to make this transaction last week. So we now have the challenge of paying back the mortgage as well as the Vermont Land Trust, and we want to do that as soon as possible to eliminate interest expense and be able to invest back into the facility to make it a better cross-country skiing area. We have received a grant from the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board for $285,000, but I should say we haven't received it yet. That's pending. A easement that has to be approved by them and some others, and that easement will preserve the mountain itself, Prospect Mountain, about 2,200 feet and up from development. So it preserves that nice piece of real estate in perpetuity for the community as a natural environment. We have to get that approved, and we have to show them we can raise $265,000 ourselves in order to get the grant. That's the condition of the grant. Easement approved plus $265,000 from us. So we do that, we'd have a total of $550,000, which would enable us to pay off both of the Vermont Land Trust and Steve and have a little bit left over. We have raised so far, with about 45 donors, $160,000, our quiet fundraising campaign. So we're off to a pretty good start at the $265,000. In addition, we've had support from the Bank of Bennington and the hospital in this. And we are in the process of petitioning the town of Woodford for a property tax exemption. And that will take a while, but I'm beginning the process of that now with our friends there, the town of Woodford, which we hope would be what they would envision as their contribution to the effort. So that is our story. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
It's a great one, Dave. And Noah, I really appreciate you coming out tonight, the school night for sure, especially for senior. I'm sure you're well, into getting ready for the recruitment or the acceptance letters coming not too long from now, right? Next March. But this is recreation is all part of this economic development hope and expectation. Recreation as an asset of this community, we can certainly have and sell that when we see it. And when you look to Woodford, it's obvious on its face. We talk about, the economic development is a public-private partnership. The private partnerships group and have already stepped up in this case, and I would suggest that it's time for this particular town to join as a public participant in the activity. I would like to see the town, depending upon my colleagues' interest in doing so, to make out of our economic development fund, which we have and maintain, a donation towards this of $10,000. But I would suggest maybe I would entertain a motion for that purpose, then we have a discussion with Dave and Noah relative to that. So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on that from fellow board members. Would you like to take a run at it?
Well, I have no reservations in being in support of that, and I just wanted to say that this is just another shining example of members of our community that care so deeply to come together and give us this gift, and I just really am very, very grateful for your hard work and the time that you all have spent. 2 years is not a short amount of time, so I am just immensely grateful. Because of all your hard work, we all get to enjoy Prospect. So you have my support for $10,000.
I'd have to agree with Jeannie. The magnanimity, the scope of the donations that Williams and Steve Whitman has proffered, and the loan from Vermont Land Trust. I think we're getting off light. We're getting off cheap for a very important asset that we can use to promote the town of Bennington, and that our students and other people can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think we just need to think about what it would be if it weren't there, to understand what a real incredible gift an asset this is to the community. So I am really grateful that all of you put the time and effort into this, because I think it will benefit us now, and it will benefit us far into the future. So thank you very much.
I appreciate those kind comments, and now it belongs to all of us, and we hope to have it continue to be the asset that it is for the community.
Chad?
I echo everything they've said. Also, what's going on in the summertime? I noticed at the property there was a concert last year, or 2 years ago, was there? Is that also?
Yeah, the current owners did have had some musical events up there, and we would entertain that. If it's important for us to be good neighbors with the good folks in Woodford, as well as Ed Shea, who owns the campground next door, and we plan on doing that. Okay. But we'd like to see more summer events going on up there that would be of interest to the whole community, including musical events. Our lodge is available for weddings, destination weddings, that's right, Prospect Mountain, at any time. And we will slowly entertain, if we can, summertime activities, such as mountain biking and trail running. Nice. The mountain biking does require a separate permit, which we don't have at this time. We have a permit to operate as a Nordic ski area. But we're open to all these suggestions, and we're going to talk Tim Payne into being our chairman of mountain biking at Prospect Mountain. I think he's right over here.
We'll save him for another evening.
Thank you.
Yes, Gene.
Will you please extend our thanks to Williams College on behalf of the Select Board?
Yes, certainly we'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. The essence of this is that this is a start. It's preserving what is so critically important that we heard. I think we're all looking forward to getting basically a follow-up, maybe sometime in the spring, as to how things are going, because since the town has put its money where its hope and expectations are, you can bring us up to date on how
happy to
things
report
are going.
back on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tom, I have a question, Tom.
Yeah, please.
How does one become a member of the Prospect Mountain Association?
Well, Stuart, our members are, if you express an interest, you're in. We do have season pass holders for those that want to use the facility.
I see.
So we will invite all those who are on our email list, contact list, as members when we have our annual meeting. And so we don't have membership dues. You just sign up. That's right. No dues.
What's the season pass cost?
Season pass varies. We have a September discount. Take advantage now, Stu.
Yes.
A single is, for the whole year, roughly $200. A family is about $5+ for the whole family all year, and it goes in between. There is two-person, senior. We have special passes for team passes, high school students, and Bill Koch students. So those are the two ends of it. 2 to 5 and in between.
Approximately how many children are in the Bill Koch program now?
Well, it is, I'm not exaggerating by a couple of hundred, and that would include local plus Williamstown and Wilmington. We have skiers from all 3 towns that are involved in that. Yeah.
Have we had any Olympians come through and by either a competition or?
Well, the Bill Koch is where it all starts, and that was true for my son Andy, and also true for Dave Jarecki, another Olympian from Prospect Mountain. Yeah, that's right. And Noah's on his way. This young man is on his way. Yeah.
Any further questions to Dave or Noah? Yes, Matthew. Yes, please.
Just as the executive director of the chamber, we're very excited, and I know Dave is talking personally about some of his ideas to us, and we're very excited about this possibility. So also the Bennington chamber is behind Dave and his efforts, and football. So we're very excited about being able to kind of speak that to the world and a whole new generation. So
thank you, Matt.
More publicity won't hurt, right? Good. Any other comments, questions that you would like to address relative to this motion? Hearing none, signify with your aye or nay. Signify aye if you're in favor of the motion.
Aye.
And that's 5 in favor with no opposition. Thank you for everything you've done for
We
our
much
community.
appreciate the confidence and the investment the board has made. We'll pass along our thanks to Williams, as Gene has mentioned there, and send a nice note to you folks too. And if you're interested in meeting 2 Olympians this Wednesday, we have Jessica Diggins, gold medalist this year in South Korea, coming up to help us promote Prospect and talk a little bit about her experiences, and Sophie Caldwell, who's also a 2-time Olympian, to talk with the kids and the Koch kids and high schoolers and just the public in general about what it's like to be a competitive skier and the importance of local skiers in their career.
Caldwell family is well known.
Way back, multi-generation, correct. She's the latest. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the discussion relative to the opioid issues in Bennington, and you can see on our warning that it's part 1. I don't purport to suggest that this is a discussion that's going to end after 20, 25, 30 minutes. This is really an opening discussion. I envision this is basically going to include a couple of more parts, basically with education, treatment, recovery. Those are all critical elements, but I thought tonight we could hear from the first responders to what you're seeing in the community in that role, and what not only what you see and where you hand off and do those various activities. But this is a conversation that is ongoing, not just here at the Select Board. There are a number of community members and panels, including there is a Bennington opiate response team underway. They actually exist. Turning Point, which we can't, leave this evening's discussion without having that recognized. And I'm hoping that participants from that area will share with us their experience and direction so that we can, if not solve this problem, make a significant impact on how our community deals with it. It's sort of like a 3-legged stool. And this is the first leg that Chief Doucette and Director Wyman are interested in helping us with. Forrest and Paul, could you just give us an overview of what you're experiencing and what you're seeing relative to this epidemic?
So Forrest and I had an opportunity to talk earlier this afternoon, and we both felt that 30 minutes wasn't long enough, but Stu told me we've been warned. We've been warned. Yeah. So we're going to start out just by telling you some things that you already know. You know, this opiate problem certainly is a community problem. It's not just a police department problem or a rescue squad problem. Obviously, we're seeing issues throughout the state and throughout the nation. This is going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of funding from the federal government and from state government to cure this problem. It's not all about, and you've heard me say it before, we're not going to arrest our way out of this. We're certainly not going to just keep using Narcan to revive people and bring people back to life. You know, it's going to take a lot of work. So with that, you know, we need help in this community just like every other community in Vermont. Some of the things that we have done at the police department is we have a lot of community partners. We get along very well with the Bennington Rescue Squad. We get along well with Southwest Vermont Medical Center. We started several years ago a drug disposal program. Currently we have 2 units at the Bennington Police Department. Chad Schmidt, our sheriff in Bennington County, has a unit there. We've partnered with Southwest Vermont Medical Center. For those of you that have been in and out of the hospital, know that there's a drug take-back unit there. And that unit is special because we work with them to make that happen. We have a key, they have a key, they can't get in it without us, and we can't get in it without them. You know, they put in an elaborate security system there, they monitor that, and we're getting a lot of prescription take-backs as a result of that. Consumer Value Store down here, CVS, they just put in a unit, and Mr. O'Neill down at the pharmacy is currently working on putting a unit there. So when you take a look at that, you know, there are several places in and around Bennington that are participating so that we can get the drugs, prescription medications back and disposing of those properly, because years ago we realized that there was a problem with that. We're lacking a little bit with what do we do with the dirty needles. We do get a lot of complaints at the police department. It seems sporadic, you know, that there are dirty needles here or there. I do send my people out to go and pick them up and dispose of them properly. But the other issue that we have is people coming in with their syringes and needles and they don't know what to do with them. So we have certain ways of handling that. Forrest and I have talked about this program, and I know that there is some community action right now in reference to that. But the other thing that's going on in the law enforcement world anyway is we've had a great rapport with many of the medical practices here. If you go up to the medical center here in Bennington, you'll actually see on the walls in some of the doctor's offices about returning unused prescriptions and things like that. So we are making an effort. It doesn't seem like we're able to cure this problem. I did a little research, and then I'll give Forrest an opportunity. I want to share with you where we're at as far as the police department goes. Last December, as the police chief and public safety director, I made the decision that the officers were going to start carrying Narcan. I brought Narcan with me tonight. I don't plan on using the Narcan, but I do want to show you what it looks like at some point, because it's not what some people think. The officers are not carrying syringes, and we're not jabbing people with syringes. There's a lot of misnomer out there, and I want to be clear on that this evening. We, since December 1st of 2017, every Bennington police officer has been carrying Narcan. Right now, around the state of Vermont, they're asking that officers carry 2 units of Narcan. Well, I can tell you that EpiPens are coming. I'm not quite sure where we're going to carry all this stuff, but what we have here is we have 1 single dose of Narcan nasal spray. This is 4 milligrams. Every single Bennington police officer, including our detectives, are carrying Narcan. Generally what we see use-wise is if we deploy Narcan 4 milligrams, sometimes the people come to in a couple of minutes. Otherwise, the rescue squad comes in and gives an additional 2 milligrams, and that seems to work for most. Since December 1st of 2017, we have deployed Narcan 24 times.
Since when, Paul?
December 1st of 2017. So in the last 10 months, per se, we have deployed Narcan 24 times as a law enforcement officer here in Bennington. There were 16 additional overdose calls that we responded to that we either arrived at the same time as the Bennington Rescue Squad, or we arrived and the people that were present had a dose of Narcan and deployed that themselves. So in the last 10 months, give or take, we have responded to 40 incidents in Bennington where we've had Narcan use. And of the 40, there were 3 additional overdoses that we responded to that did unfortunately result in a fatality. That we were not able to do anything. We weren't able to
How many, Paul, that you weren't able to get Narcan to? 3.
So of the 43 incidents, Narcan's been deployed 40. Again, of the 43 incidents, we have been successful 40 times in the last 10 months. So, and I'll reserve any further comments.
Before you go on, is there a training protocol for both carrying, using, and employing by your officers?
Yes, we had the Vermont Department of Health came down and we did a trainer program. All of the supervisors of the Bennington Police Department participated in that. We also have Narcan strategically deployed throughout the police department. For obvious reasons, there have been some incidents where people have come in with bail money, counted out bail money, given the money to a police officer or a dispatcher, and there's been opiate substance and have caused an overdose.
Right.
So we are, we're very careful with this, and it's not just the heroin issues that we're worried about. I mean, we're more concerned at this point with fentanyl, a synthetic, which is extremely dangerous, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Forrest?
Yep. Thanks, Forrest.
Thanks, Chief. Like Paul said, this is not a problem we're going to arrest our way out of or Narcan our way out of. This is, I'll echo his comments of saying it's a community problem. One of the issues that we have, and Paul's folks deal with this as well, is that there's privacy issues with patients that we treat. So we can't, XYZ patient calls Paul's folks. That's not someone that we can refer to treatment or care because that's sharing of protected health information. So it puts us in a really weird situation where that's in addition to the treatment and the enforcement aspect of it, or the emergency treatment, the access to mental health, the access to bigger substance abuse and those things, which we all know are a problem in Southwest Vermont or in Vermont in general, make that difficult. The fact that we can't call the ED and say, or keep in mind that there are these folks now that we can revive, and if they get to a point where they're back to alert and oriented and sort of meet a medical clearance, they can refuse care of going to the hospital. So the one chance of them, or not the one chance, but a chance of them getting into the system where they could potentially get additional help or additional resources goes to the wayside.
Is that a common response?
It's becoming more and more common.
Really?
I don't know the percentages off the top of my head of how frequent that is, but it happens a lot. So that's frustrating. We, like Paul, have a great working relationship with all the police departments that we serve, including the Sheriff's Department and the Vermont State Police. Emergency Department we work very closely with, as you can imagine. Patients that we do transport end up there. So I put a few pieces of data in front of you just to have a little bit of a reference point. Now keep in mind that we are responding to a multi-town area, so my numbers don't necessarily match but they're close. And the other thing before we go down this path too far is that remember overdose responses for us is not, overdose doesn't necessarily equal opioid or heroin. If a child takes grandma's blood pressure medicine, that also comes out as an overdose. But in 2016, we saw we were responding 53 times. In 2017, we responded to 71 overdoses. So that's a 34% increase from 16 to 17. In 18, year to date, we've hit 53. If you annualize that, it'll be about 73 by the end of the year. So about a little less than 1% increase. What's the cause of that? I don't know. One of the speculative things that we have is that because of the access to Narcan from Turning Point and other programs like that, and the fact that pharmacies can now give that kind of thing out, is that folks are treating themselves at home and maybe not calling for help. Maybe they feel like they have a safety device in their pocket or in their cabinet at home, so until things get really bad or someone's not getting revived, then maybe that's why EMS is called. So there's probably a lot of hidden things in here.
Forrest, they're not giving it out right. You said they're giving it out, but isn't one of the barriers that they have to charge for it?
I believe.
No, at this point in time, Turning Point, when we first started our Narcan program, we were carrying naloxone, and we actually got ours from the Turning Point, and we didn't pay for that.
I see. I meant the pharmacies, but that's good. There's another.
Yeah, Turning Point's free. I'm unsure of the.
I think the pharmacies have to charge for it.
I think
still.
they do too,
Yeah.
but I don't think you need a script for it anymore.
Is it a prescription still?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I think anyone can. I think I
over the
heard
counter.
Jennifer Fell say anyone can buy it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about $40 per dose.
Mm-hmm. Now, right now, both Paul and thankfully the EMS side, it's become such a problem in Vermont that they are providing Narcan for us, and Paul for the intranasal. We have both intranasal and intravenous Narcan, which is provided through a grant through the state. You guys all know how grants through the state go. There will be an expiration date on that at some point. What drug makers also like to do is when the demand goes up, you mentioned EpiPens earlier, there have been historically humongous spikes in drug costs, so about the time that the state goes and stops funding this, it'll probably be about the time that the cost raises, and then we'll have to, there's an additional supply cost with that.
Forrest?
Yes.
With respect to Narcan, does it only treat opioids, or is it?
Primarily, it works on the same receptors in the brain. It just has a higher affinity to where your brain wants to attach to the Narcan receptors more so than the opioid receptors.
But it's effective not just with opioids. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. There probably is. I don't know all the pharmacokinetics right at this moment, but opioids are the primary treatment.
But you're seeing increased use of and activity of the fentanyl.
Oh yeah, things are laced with anything now, and the thing is that it could be hearsay on the scene. They might think it is one thing. It could be totally something else. They might not know what it is. It could be a combination of a whole bunch of stuff, and that's where when Paul was talking about the safety of all of our folks, is that we have to be very careful about getting it on our skin. Getting it, if it's somehow spread around the house, if it's on other things like dollar bills or the kitchen table or the floor that they're having to lay on, becomes a safety hazard that we just have to be mindful of.
I think it's important too that, Jim, you brought it up, and as did Forrest, Narcan only works for a certain period of time. And it's very important that people understand why they need to go to the hospital. That's why we respond together, because sometimes law enforcement can convince people to go to the hospital and vice versa. I mean,
Those are also typically unsafe scenes or potentially unsafe scenes.
And I think it's important that we put the information out there that people understand it's not an EpiPen, but it's very similar. I mean, if you use an EpiPen, you need to go to the hospital, you need to be evaluated because the effects of the epinephrine wear off. It's the same thing with Narcan. The effects could wear off and you could go back out. So that's one of the reasons why we ask that people be transported to the hospital and be evaluated. This is not the end-all, cure-all. I mean, there are people that we have Narcaned 2 or 3 times. It's a problem.
Paul and Forrest, is it pervasive? Does it cross all socioeconomic levels, or is it primarily, unfortunately, where we're seeing this is in impoverished areas of the town?
I think it crosses. I mean, I think that there are people, remember, we just don't have people going out and buying bags of heroin. I mean, you've got people that are overdosing on, Percocet or Percodan or what have you, prescription medication as well. That's why it's so important that we collect that back.
So it crosses all.
It does. I mean, unfortunately, there are people, that have done very well in life. And they get addicted to, Percocets or what have you, opiate-based prescription medication. I mean, that definitely crosses the whole spectrum. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there are people that function every day abusing opiates.
And you're limited with the police department, and for that matter, Forrest, you're limited with respect to doing any kind of interdiction or attempt to help because of the inability to release any information.
For me, it's very passive. We can leave documents, we can recommend they call folks, we can give them numbers, give them information, but after that, we can't force anyone to.
This is a good lead into, dealing with the narcon, the issues that you've recovered them basically for that time. What is the next step in the enforcement process? Where do we go from here as far as these departments?
So there's a couple things that I want to just make sure that people understand. What happens is there's this Facebook scanner page, and the police and the rescue squad respond to an overdose, and then we start getting the comments. Well, why the hell aren't the police arresting these people? They found needles. They found, because the officers talk on the radio or whatever. And I think it's important that people understand that the law was changed in Vermont, and if law enforcement and EMS respond to an overdose, and there are 15 packets of heroin laying on the floor there, we can't arrest that person. It's something, and I'm not saying that we should arrest everybody, because I honestly don't feel that way, but sometimes the court system is how we get people treatment. And when we respond there and we just kind of collect up the heroin, or we collect up the used syringes and needles and we dispose of them properly, that's not really solving the issue. We can't force people. We have the same thing. We refer people to Turning Point. United Counseling Service has been a great, ally in all of this, and they've changed the way they do business to help us out. I think it's very important that we consider that. So I brought, not really for show and tell, but I brought a friend with me tonight.
Another officer?
No, I brought a friend. That would be Gracie. I don't have any friends at the police department. So what I'd like to do, just for a couple minutes, let's have Officer Ross come forward with Gracie. And worked all day today.
Yes.
Really tired.
Really? Oh, I know how she feels.
What I'd like to do is just have Rob talk to you for just a few minutes about what he and Gracie are capable of doing. I did not give you any numbers. We're on par for drug arrests. Actually, just a little bit higher than we were last year. We're going to touch on that briefly before we end, but I'd love Rob to just talk to you for a couple minutes.
You can get a mic. Yeah. Could we get a mic? Yeah.
No problem.
Gracie's not going to say anything? Support the secrecy.
You don't like that on seats.
That's great.
So Gracie is dual certified in patrol and drug detection. She's been certified since November 2017 through the Canine Association for tracking, patrol work, evidence recovery. Drugs, she's been certified since April of 2018. I know it's been a long day, girl. She got called out last night at 4 a.m. to go track a burglary suspect. I'll get into that in a second. So since April of 2018, she's been certified in narcotic detection. She can detect heroin, crack, coke, meth, ecstasy, and any derivative of that. She is not trained in marijuana, with marijuana being legalized in July of 2018. With that, over the past 4 months, she's been deployed approximately 10 to 12 times for drugs. Overall, since November 2017, she's been deployed over 40 times in patrol work, tracking, building searches, all that fun stuff. Since then, she's seized over $10,000 in United States currency that has been tied to the drug issues going on. From there, she's also seized over, it's going to be about 60 grams of cocaine, 34 of crack cocaine, and approximately 200 bags of heroin. And that's only in a 4-month period.
Wow.
Does she get a commission?
I tried. They said no.
I think I saw on your Facebook page she was proudly lording over.
Oh yeah, that was actually her first seizure.
Was it really?
Yeah, that was over $8,000 in cash, 34 grams of cocaine. There was fentanyl found in the pills that you can barely see in the picture there too. Yeah. That was a very good find for her and the Bennington Police Department.
Great.
Because fentanyl is so dangerous, is she at risk?
Absolutely, yeah, I carry 2 things of Narcan on me at all times.
They're effective on her as well.
Absolutely, they are. So, you good? Of course. So nasal for her, she's supposed to only take 1 milligram. It's a 4 milligram. It's not going to hurt her. It might actually help her even more.
So she can't OD on
No,
Narcan?
she can't OD on the Narcan, but she could OD on heroin, fentanyl, anything else that's found, especially if it's a loose powder. If she inhales it, she could possibly overdose. And then from there, I'd hit her with the Narcan, bring her to the vet. They prefer intramuscular, which is with a needle. We don't have that. That costs about $200 per vial, and it is only good for 1 year. Then it expires, and you have to get a new one. The nasal works perfectly fine for her.
Do suspects consider her as a deterrent when they see her on the street?
Absolutely. I have had people hand me heroin when I didn't even talk to them because of her.
Really? Interesting.
Come here. Did I drop a treat?
And were they arrested when?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Here, Gil.
Well, I remember.
How old is she?
She's 2 years old.
Yeah, right.
You good girl.
I think Paul told me a few years ago that one of the smarter set was suspicious about the authenticity of his drugs and wondered if he could come down to the police station and have it tested. He said, yeah, sure, come right down.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, all the time. Any more questions?
She worked with other enforcement agencies besides?
Absolutely. She's worked for the Bennington Police Department, Vermont State Police, Bennington County Sheriff's Department. We've gotten 1 phone call from Berkshire County to use her, but I wasn't available at the time, so I could not take her down there. But they were very willing to call us in the future.
Is it single handler?
Yes, I'm the only handler.
Yeah, that's great. So you went through this training, same as?
6 months, Monday through Friday. We train 24/7, basically.
That's great.
Wow.
Other folks, I'm kind of monopolizing.
What's the tracking? You mentioned tracking. Have you used her services in tracking?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, all the time.
Going after people or?
So it could be a missing person. It could be, we had an armed robbery at Rite Aid in February that she was actually used for. She found evidence along the way, knowing that we were on the right track. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find the person. He got into a car and drove off, and I knew that based off the way her behavior was when we got to the end. Besides that, we've located missing people. We've located burglary suspects. Last night, we got called out to a local business that had been burglarized earlier in the night. The midnight shift called me. We went out. Within about 5-10 minutes, we have an area that now we know where this person went to. And there was evidence found along the way of that one as well. And it's just going to help them now focus on a certain area, whereas without the dog, they have no idea where this person went. You know, there's no cameras everywhere in town. The place that had them had cameras, and then the motel we went to also had cameras. We were able to pinpoint a little better, and now it's just still an investigation.
Does Gracie go to school?
Oh, absolutely. We've been to the high school, the middle school. We've done a bunch of demonstrations so far this year. School's only been in session 2-3 weeks so far. We've been to the middle school 4 times already. Just walking around, introducing her to the kids. Kids love her.
Yeah.
And it also gives me a new interaction with the kids instead of, I'm here because of whatever you did. Now I'm here so you can pet my dog.
Yeah.
Officer, when she finds something, how do you know that she's found something? Does she sit or?
So the dogs are either one of 2 ways. They're either aggressive or passive. She's passive, but that doesn't mean it could change over time, not based off of me. It's pretty much determined on what the dog wants to do when we first start training them. Gracie is passive at this point. If it comes to a point where the odor is so overwhelming for her, or she's getting frustrated with, this is where it is, I'm telling you where it is, or I give her a command to show me where it is, she will actually put her paw up at where it is. Most of the time now, what it is it's called an alert, a final alert. And what it is not anything that a dog doesn't do. So a bark is not an alert. Any dog can do that. It is a change in behavior, a deep nasal intake, and then whatever she's trained to do. Some dogs down, they'll lay down. Other dogs sit, some scratch. She sits for me. And I know that at that point, yes, I know, it's been a long day. We'll be done in a second.
Trying to tell you something.
Oh, yeah, she's trying to tell me, let's go.
Chain of, she testified, or you testified relative to chain of custody, relative to her findings? Has she gone to court with you, or?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. She goes down to court, she'll sit there. I actually testified last week. She sat in the courtroom and just stared at me the whole time. Why are we here?
Yeah, I feel the same way, or did. Thank you, officer. Other questions?
Yeah, I had a conversation, and you may not know the answer to this. I had a conversation with a local physician, and we were talking about the opioid crisis in Bennington, and he was somewhat optimistic that with the changes in dosing, when people are leaving the hospital after surgery, they're not getting, a prescription for so many pills, that he was hoping that the incidence would start, there would be less people becoming addicted as these new guidelines were being implemented. Are you hopeful as well, or are you seeing any evidence of that?
We are very hopeful. Again, working with the medical center and having the doctors prescribe. Some doctors are not prescribing opiates. You might have a minor surgical procedure where, in the past you get 30 Oxycontin, and now they tell you have 3 or 4 for the first day or 2, and then take Tylenol and Advil. Tylenol and Advil are very effective for people that have pain. And I think that, I'm not a physician, but I can tell you that 1 Tylenol and 1 Advil work amazing. And if that doesn't work, then it's an Excedrin. But anyway, I think it is working for us. And having the hospital on board, and having Mr. O'Neill and CVS on board, and having more of these drug take-back boxes available, I think that's going to benefit us in the long run. I really do.
And I think I heard this on the radio. They were doing a program on Vermont in particular, on how this state is dealing with the crisis. And it's a huge problem, but if this reporting was accurate, Vermont is actually one of the better states in the country dealing with this crisis, which is great, but it really speaks to the gravity of this situation. If we're struggling and we're doing a better job than many other states, so while that's not something to be, I guess we're not doing a great job, I think we're doing more than other states according to this reporting. And I think for me personally, I know I have had, not my family, but someone very close to me became addicted to heroin from a surgery. And statistics are great, and I really appreciate this, and they are extremely important, and I know you're both really compassionate people, but I think I need to remind myself that it isn't statistics, it's people, it's families, it's kids. And I have to always remind myself that the devastating effects of this are more than just numbers, it's lives, and sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, children.
And I agree with you 100%. Stop and think about this. When we were most all of us were growing up, it was, oh my gosh, they're an alcoholic. And we kind of looked at people differently because they consume too much alcohol. Now we've kind of forgotten that. And now we look at people that are drug users and people that have lots of issues and they need help. We can't just say, we have to help these people. And that's why, again, it's a community problem. Forrest and I agree with that. And we need to get more people on board in this community. And I think that there needs to be a focus on treatment, and there needs to be a focus on more, for the police department, more investigations and bringing more people to justice that are dealing the junk, which is important. So I'm going to just...
You're confident that you have the resources to...
Just going to ask that.
So I want to just share with you, and I don't want to go against the grain with Stuart because he's a great boss. I want to share with you that I really am going to be coming at you guys hard in January. Last year I asked for an additional officer. We need to restructure the police department a little bit. I know you considered it, and I know that we want to keep taxes down, but at the same time, I would really like to dedicate an officer just to doing drug investigations and significant stolen property investigations, because, my friends, it comes hand in hand. And then the other piece of this is you got to meet Rob and you got to meet Gracie. They've been very successful so far. There's a push in this community for us to expand our K-9 unit to 2 officers and 2 dogs. Rob has done extremely well. Susan and John Soretta at Sunnyside Diner would like to have another Protect and Serve event to help the police department raise money for an additional K-9. I've spoken with Sheriff Schmidt, and he would be on board with doing another K-9 fundraiser in March and that's how we raised the funds to get Gracie to begin with. There's only $4,000 in the police department budget to run the K-9 program. I think if we added a little bit of money to that, I think we would be able to support an additional K-9 and handler, and at the same time, I'm telling you that I'm confident that we can raise money. If we can raise $3,000 or $3,200 using John and Susan Sorita's Sunnyside Diner business, I think that we can raise that same amount of money in a day to help us establish another K-9 unit, and at the same time, there is a family in Bennington that is willing to donate a male German Shepherd to the Bennington Police Department when we're ready to move forward with this. So it's not a big hit to the taxpayers. It's something that I would just seek your approval, whether you speak about it in executive session or you let Stuart know, but I would really like to move forward with adding an additional unit to the police department for this purpose, as well as in January, like I said, I'm gonna come at you and say, hey, you know, we need one more body at the police department. Would I like to have 5 or 6 and get my department up to the same size as Rutland? Sure, but let's take this one step at a time. So again, another officer, and I'd love as that would be a drug investigator, and let's increase the canine abilities of the Bennington Police Department, and continue working with our community partners and make Bennington a safer community.
Is that an officer that would be used specifically for investigations of drugs? And like I know in certain communities, St. Albans, I think, has a drug investigation force or area.
St. Albans is amazing. They have Stuart and I have talked about their approach to drug investigations, and that's the direction we're going to head here. In fact, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I spoke to Stu and told him that we were going to become, we're aggressive now, but we're going to become a little more aggressive, and you may get complaints about Paul Doucette. Stu already gets those, but no, just kidding. I hope. But the bottom line is that's the plan. I've spoken with the chief in St. Albans, and I know what he's doing, and you know, I like the approach, and we've actually started doing that here. We are sitting outside of people's homes. We are talking to the people that are coming out of those homes, and it's happening. It's already happening. I'd like to do it with somebody that's dedicated and not pull people off of a shift, because sometimes they have to leave to go do a crash or whatever. We have to be focused on what we're doing. Right. So.
But I know in St. Albans being that example, it was part of a budgetary discussion and consideration. It's like you're giving us a trailer of what's to come.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't realize that was going to be part of the discussion.
Yes, sir.
No, that's fine. Other questions?
Do you want to give Forrest a crack at that same question?
No, I think we can't afford it.
Maybe we can take it out of his budget.
Yeah, no. What do you think, Forrest, relative to?
As far as our actual equipment right now, we are pretty good. Of course, ambulances, I believe I told you folks in January, a new ambulance to replace one that's 8 or 9 years old, in the door with nothing on it costs about $195,000. Right now, staffing-wise, I'm sure you read in the paper, we have a new apprenticeship program. You know, like the police department now, we're getting to the point where there's not a huge amount of people getting into this industry, and you know, the mentality for so many years was come and spend all this time and we'll or pay for your training, and then maybe we'll hire you and that type of thing. And nowadays it's sort of like you guys do, where you hire day one full-time, they get right to an academy, and end up with a position afterwards to help deal with the massive amount of hours that we have to cover. So it's a complex problem. It's not getting any easier, for sure. I've reached as far as our folks, when I was here in January, we still had a little bit of flexibility as far as the amount of staffing. Where now that everyone that currently is employed with me that wants a full-time position has one. Other folks are, attorneys or dentists or teachers or whatever during the week, and maybe come and work a Saturday or Sunday night or something to that effect. But there's not a ton of people getting into my industry. So we're working with the CDC and CCV and VTC and developing apprenticeship programs, and realizing there's not a silver bullet, but we've got to try to attract people into this industry and keep them there. Is that a long answer and a very gray answer to your question?
It's a good one. The essence of this is, we need a healthy community, and we can only do that when we have all the resources that are directed to keep it that way, and get it and keep it. And I think not too many years ago, when we had the media, about the town of Bennington having an opioid crisis, the only thing that we can say we were first, because we were just demonstration of what was happening throughout the country. We were no better and no worse. I think right now we are really trying to get to the root cause of what our community needs to respond to it. And folks like yourselves, I think we can get there. We can make a difference, and I think we are now. And I think when we hear from Turning Point and the other folks, we'll see that this community is taking a proactive approach to dealing with this crisis. And we talk about the Prospect Mountain and the healthy atmosphere that creates. Well, we've got to add to it by creating this environment that is safe for everyone.
And I think too, Tom, if you don't mind, Paul and I both aren't just focused on Bennington. I think we're both involved at committees and task forces at regional or state levels, sometimes national levels, where there are other players at the table, and there's a lot of effort, sort of echoing what you're saying, on this topic from a whole variety of industries, trying to figure out this sort of very complex problem with a lot of tentacles and a lot of moving parts that is not going to be an easy fix. So,
great. Anything else we'd like to bother these gentlemen? Thanks very much for sharing your situation right now, and stay tuned for part 2 and 3, and we might ask you back. Thank you. So please go ahead.
Who pays for the Narcan?
right now the state does. The State Department of Health provides both for the police department and EMS.
When we took the class, ma'am, they told us that the state of Vermont was currently spending about $350,000 a year purchasing Narcan to be deployed throughout the state of Vermont. So, it's a lot of money.
It don't make me feel very good.
Well, you know...
I'm highly allergic, and I can't even afford to have an Narcan. Yeah, they keep giving people shots. We don't want this. What's the point?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I was anticipating this, not from the select board. One of the issues that, I struggled with my position on carrying Narcan. One of the things that we have, and this is why sometimes I don't care for social media, we're proud of the fact that we are able to carry Narcan, and we've saved a lot of lives using Narcan, coupled with the Bennington Rescue Squad. And it is, I understand your point, especially when we've Narcaned the same person 3 times over. But at the same time, we have to give everybody a shot. We have to give everybody an opportunity to correct their behavior. We do take some criticism for carrying Narcan. There are some people that feel as though if you're going to inject Narcan, inject heroin or snort heroin, and you overdose, then so be it, that would solve the problem. But in the big picture, it really doesn't. I mean, we have to get people on the right path and correct their behavior. We can't incarcerate everyone. We try to correct their behavior. So I kind of look at that analogy, that we're giving somebody a second chance, or in some cases a third chance. Some of these people get addicted, and if, I've never been addicted to drugs, and this might seem a little weird. Boy, I used to drink like 8 cans of Diet Coke a day. I loved that. And I'll tell you, it was one of the toughest things I ever did, especially having to work for Mr. Hurd and stop drinking Diet Coke. I had to stop
with the Mr. Hurd things.
I had to, but it was tough because I felt like I was addicted to Diet Coke. I really was. It was a tough thing to do, but I got through it. And I think that some people just need to realize that there are other things in life than just chasing that high. And so I do think it's a great program. I think it's worthwhile, and we have to give people the opportunity. I really do feel that way.
It's a small price to pay. $350,000 for the lives that... I'm sorry?
I said, what's the point of it?
Stay tuned for part 2 and 3, and we'll talk about that.
Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah, please.
Wendy, do you want to speak?
Please,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Officer.
Hi, my name is Wendy Lawrence. I just had a couple things that I wanted to touch base on. You asked, does it touch all walks of life? And I wanted to speak on the fact that, yes, it does. My son, at the age of 14, started on the walk of addiction. And for 4 years, our life became a nightmare. And my son did overdose. And I sit here to say that I am fortunate and blessed that my son did get help and did receive Narcan and was saved. And he is here today doing amazing things and is in recovery and works with Ken and is out there in the community doing amazing things, reaching the youth and trying to teach the youth and touch the youth about addiction and drugs, and has turned his life around and is a life worth saving. Every life is worth saving. And does it take the first time? No. Does it take the second time? Maybe not. But every life is worth saving. And these are people who are suffering and they are lost. And my son attempted suicide many times because he was suffering and he was lost. But every life is worth saving, and they do amazing things when they come out the other side. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. And just have in mind, this is something that we're not going to solve the issues that are talked about tonight. We're going to have, and we have to have, as a community, select board responsibility to hear about the addictions, the recoveries, and the fact and how and why we're doing this exercise. Tonight we heard from law enforcement. Ken's going to be coming up here, giving you forewarned, forearmed. It's such a horrendous situation that our country, our state, and our town has to deal with. And there's no more graphic example than what we just heard. So I appreciate everyone's comments and thoughts and concerns, but let's get on with the next part of this discussion. And it's not going to resolve something within the next 2 weeks, but we are getting, I think, the community involved in the process. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your comments. The next item on our agenda is the municipal planning grant application, which, Dan, are you speaking to that? Jim? Oh, you got Jim here. Great. Jim Sullivan.
Hello, everyone.
You guys are dressed the same except for the vest.
Uniform. We're here this evening to talk about a opportunity to apply for a municipal planning grant. I'm going to do just a quick introduction, and then Jim prepared the application, so I'm going to let him do a little bit more details on the grant application. But just a little bit of history. You folks know that the way we implement our land use policies is through our bylaws, through our land use and development regulations. Although we've done some tweaks here and there over the years, the last comprehensive review of that document was done in 2004, so we're heading on 15 years since we've really looked closely at that document. And we thought it was about time, since we've had at least 2 iterations of our town plan, on which those regulations are meant to be based and are meant to implement. So when this opportunity came up, Jim asked me if it would make sense for his staff and for him to develop a municipal planning grant application to help the Planning Commission by hiring consultants to do a comprehensive review of the regulations. We think 15 years is a long enough time, and lots of things have changed, and although we're pretty happy with our regulations, we think we can always get better. So I'm going to let Jim Sullivan, the Executive Director of the Regional Commission, talk about the application, maybe a little bit more specifics, not too much, because we don't have a lot of time, but...
You take as long as you want, Jim. We'll tell you when we've had enough.
So Jim.
No worries. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I mean, you folks have covered a lot of ground tonight, and but what would a night be without talking about zoning a little bit, right? So, yeah, as Dan mentioned, the town plan has to be updated periodically, and the most recent update was just completed fairly recently, and it is strongly encouraged that municipalities take a look at their implementation tools and measures after the plan is adopted. And the Bennington Town Plan has always been pretty good about setting forth some specific projects and initiatives that ought to be undertaken in the ensuing years after adoption of the plan. And they're really pretty specific this time about taking a look at the zoning regulations and making sure that the land use regulations overall are implementing the goals of the town plan. And the plan even got more specific and talked about tackling the kind of the way that the bylaws themselves are structured, and looking at the concept of using what's called form-based zoning or form-based code, which is somewhat recent innovation in the area of land use planning that really focuses heavily on the form of development and the relationship of land uses relative to nearby land uses to a slightly greater extent than the former emphasis on just looking at use, and also trying to treat the form of the development and the dimensions and dimensional standards of the development in a way that's consistent with the plan's objectives of encouraging mixed-use development, pedestrian-friendly environment, all the types of things that the good planning commissioners and you folks have laid out in your plan. So by kind of taking a look at the regulations, especially in the area in the town that's within the designated growth center, in the context of what can we do to the regulations to reframe them, keeping certainly probably the basic structure and element, but reframing them a bit in terms of these ideas behind form-based zoning. Can they be simplified? Can they be made more effective in achieving what the goals of the plan are? And maybe made a little bit easier for people to understand and visualize as well. So that's the essence of it. And the idea will be to produce revised regulations, hopefully with some appropriate illustrations to make it easy for people to see and understand what the written word is talking about, and as a companion piece to make sure that all of the pieces are in place for the town to obtain another designation, the so-called neighborhood designation. Neighborhood development area designation that provides certain incentives for residential development that basically meets the design criteria and the standards that are laid out in the housing section of your town plan. So it's very much consistent with what you want, but the state has a designation for that as well.
Is it more user-friendly, the form-based? Will it be easier for the planners, the zoning board to use that tool?
I like to think that it will be easier, and it will be easier to visualize for board members and the public and applicants as well, to kind of be able to actually visualize what you're talking about, rather than slogging through some of the fairly opaque dimensional standards that are typical of zoning regulations. I mean, those standards will still be there. There'll still be some use restrictions, but there may be some ability to consolidate some of the zoning districts and to illustrate in more simple terms kind of like what the form and shape of development that's desired is.
Our goal really is, one of our major goals is to make it more accessible to folks, so that it is something that's more easily understandable and more predictable. We think we're pretty good in those areas, but we can always do better. And so that's really one of our main goals. Kind of one of the things we'd like to do, realistic in the amount of time and money we have, but we would eventually like to make our document significantly more usable in a web-based, as a web-based document. We think we can get part of the way there with this project, but probably a future project is to make it even more of a primarily a web-based document. Most people get their information initially from internet searches or web searches, and we would like our document to be something that's very, very accessible and easy to use online. Right now it's, it's good, it's a PDF, you can scroll through it, you can search through it, but it's not, I guess I wouldn't say it's web friendly. So eventually that's probably 2 years down the road we'd like to get there.
The logical extension of this is exactly that, by creating this type of progressive document, then someone could, for example, ultimately maybe go to a parcel map and click on their parcel, and then it would bring up the zoning standards that are applicable to that property, as well as illustrations of what they look like and a table next to it, so it's much more accessible to folks. Like Dan said, I mean, it might be a couple steps to get there, but we certainly want to take the first step. And I do want to point out that kind of as a way of kicking off this project, we hope we have, we're going to be bringing in a planner named Randall Arendt, and he's going to be doing a presentation and discussion at Bennington College on form-based standards, simplified form-based standards, the kind that we hope to implement in Bennington, and that's on October 17th.
When's that?
October 17th.
What time?
At 5 o'clock.
Can you explain?
We should probably all go.
Yeah, can you, I may be the only one on the board who, I can't quite wrap my brain around form-based. Can you give like more of a concrete example of what that would look like?
Yeah, well, I will be honest, form-based code, there's a whole institute dedicated to form-based codes, and I'm not an expert, but I will say that the general concept is that, zoning for a long time involved the segregation of land uses, like houses go over there, and apartments go there, and stores go there, and industry goes there, and it created all these, segregated uses, and it kind of discouraged mixed use and mixed use development, and form-based zoning was an effort to recognize while there still needs to be some protections from incompatible land uses, that maybe things could fit together a bit better and work well, focusing more on the form and the design and layout of properties and uses, rather than being so strict about segregating the uses. So that's kind of how it got started, and in a grand scale thing, I mean, if you were starting with a blank canvas, you'd start with a town and you'd draw some like radial transects out and have different sectors along each of those transects be subject to different form-based standards. But I think that we're in a very well-developed community that's developed over many years, and so we have to kind of make the form-based standards fit in with the existing landscape.
Based on what you just said, I'm thinking of like a neighborhood with a corner store.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the town has recognized in their documents that you'd like to encourage, and this is the kind of thing that would hopefully encourage more of that, as well as encourage a form and type of development that really kind of complements the notion of complete streets type development. And those
things can coexist.
Yeah.
Much better. Thank you.
Good. Other members? Planner here.
It's probably, I love this stuff.
That's why we put it fifth or sixth.
I do think that form-based could be a very interesting way for us to go. And I like the approach, which is just pick a discrete area that we really work on first and see if we can make it a sensible, better sense of regulations for that area. And it's probably worth saying that we've done zoning more or less the same for 40, 50 years or something like that. So, we've been using the same basic paradigm for a long time. So I guess my only request would be, as enthusiastic as I am about this making our downtown better, stronger, and more resilient, I do think it would be great to, and I guess I direct this at you, Dan, make an extra special effort to communicate with the select board when the pivotal meetings are going on at the planning commission, because presumably this would be something that would be developed in conjunction with the planning commission, right? And then
Absolutely.
rather than have the final kind of end work deposited on our desk at the end and, you know, sort of, which I know you wouldn't do, but just more than usual, kind of keep us posted, because it seems like something that many of us will want to kind of track as it evolves, rather than waiting until the thinking's almost finished.
Sure, and I definitely agree with that approach. In fact, our planning commission always looks for ways to interact more directly with the select board. But Jim's discussion or announcement about the October 17th meeting, that would really be a great one for everybody to go to. Randall Arendt, for us planning geeks, I guess we'll say, is a very well-known individual, and I don't know, I haven't seen him speak recently, so I don't know how good he'll do as a presentation, but some of his writings are very, very well done, and I think he has a great grasp on the type of form-based standards that we'd like to impose. Form-based codes can be somewhat rigid and very expensive to develop, but form-based standards is kind of like form-based codes light that smaller communities can embrace and use in an efficient manner, and he's written extensively on that, and I expect that he'll have some good insights for everybody.
I just consulted my calendar. I don't know if it's an issue. It conflicts with the MAU meeting. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, it's one of the only nights we could get him, so he's locked in.
And there's other people, if you want someone from the school district, it doesn't have to be the superintendent, it could be another.
I think the community should participate in this whole planning process too, and really encourage community members that either we all have a stake, but maybe some more than others, to participate in the actual planning discussion. Because the planning commission and the board, you know, we sort of operate almost in a different sphere sometimes. We want to hear from the real people that are impacted by the zoning constraints, because it does sound like this can provide the management and administrators of our zoning a little bit more flexibility on how things may piece together based upon a comprehensive process.
So can I ask, following up on all of that, so how widely used is form-based standards? How widely used are they now? And it sounds like maybe there's a continuum of ways that it can look. Is it a huge departure from, and it feels like it's not a huge...
It's not really a huge departure, it's more of a focus. I guess I would say almost every regulation, almost every zoning bylaw has some form-based standards in it, how comprehensive they are. So I would say even with our regulations, the design standards that we have for Northside Drive and some of the historic regulations that we have for downtown are very similar to what you would see in a form-based standards regulation. And in fact, even the ones on Northside Drive, we probably would only tweak those a little bit. There's other areas where we need a lot more focus on those types of standards, making them more clear, making them more accessible, so I guess the answer is almost all regulations have them to some degree. It's a matter of focus and then commitment to how important you think the form of your development is to the quality of life.
Yeah, I think,
so is it new language?
Yeah, I think there'd definitely be some new language and a new way of presenting the information. I think it's also a way of kind of forcing you to think about what you're already requiring. You know, an example that's often used is that from the time that we started developing zoning regulations, we always have minimum setback requirements. So something has to be at least this far away from a property line or a street line. And it's a way to start being and say, wait, is that what we really want to do? Sometimes what you want instead is a maximum setback. You know, you don't want to push buildings back away from the sidewalk. You want to make sure that they're within a certain distance of a sidewalk. So by thinking in terms of the form, I mean, it's always been there, but now you're saying, hey, take a look at what this really looks like in the context of your community and help decide. And as far as how broadly use this is, I can really only speak to, Vermont. It's a national thing, certainly. As I mentioned, there's a foreign-based institute that has workshops and conferences around the country. But, Newport, Vermont adopted a form-based code, and I was speaking recently with a planner up in Shelburne that recently adopted a form-based code for just a discrete area of that community. And I believe a couple other towns in Chittenden County and Washington County have developed it. Not a lot, but several communities have.
That's great. We have a resolution that was included in our packet for adopting the application for the municipal planning grant. Could I have a motion for consideration?
I'd make a motion that we adopt this, please.
Waive the reading of it.
Second.
Second.
Any other questions? Probably one is that, the cost of this, and it was in our packet, but it probably behoove us to share that. Dan, what is the...
Sure. So the overall cost of the project, we expect to be about $19,000. The required match is about $1,700. We believe that by spreading that over 2 fiscal years, this fiscal year, next year, we should be able to take it out of existing and proposed funds from areas such as education and professional services and other purchase services. We will take a look in January to see if we need to push it just a little bit more to make sure that we can close out the grant, but we feel pretty confident that there'll be minimal impact on the budget.
Could we waive the reading of the application and resolution, and adopt the resolution? In favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
That's 6 in favor and no opposition. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That's great. Wastewater treatment facility bond application.
Yes, this is the last of the bond documents that we'll be presenting to you, I believe. This is a $6 million loan amount. It is the final portion of the $9.85 million that the voters approved. Once again, this is a loan document that is signed for the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, although the funds do flow through the Vermont Environmental Conservation Department. This does require the chair of the governing body in one place, and I think board signatures in 2 others. It requires a motion to accept the loan documents, waive the reading of the resolution, and approve.
We have it in our packet, but I'll entertain a motion to that effect. Adopt the resolution and waive the reading. Any questions relative to its content? Seems pretty straightforward.
I had one minor question. I don't think you got a second on that, Tom, but...
I'm just waiting for one.
Second.
Okay.
Stuart, I think the answer is probably yes to this, but I meant to call you about this earlier, but there's a requirement that any part of what's under this mortgage is covered with flood insurance. Does that, I'm sure we have flood insurance on the wastewater treatment facility itself, but does that include everything to do with the wastewater system or just the area where the improvements are being made?
This refers just to the area where the improvements are made, but I can tell you that the town of Bennington and all of its facilities carry flood insurance that far exceeds what the minimum federal requirements are.
Figured, but thank you. That's all from me.
Other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
6 in favor and no opposition to that being adopted.
And I will circulate that. Tom, you're the one first signature, and then the other 2 are for the board.
Great.
In its entirety.
The manager's report.
I don't have anything tonight.
All right. We're going to need an executive session for a real estate matter, which is not appropriate for public participation at this point. Other business, I do commend to the board and anyone else review of the Community Development Director's report of August relative to the various activities that have been taking place. There's quite a bit going on here. particularly reference to Merchant Park. Splash pad equipment's been ordered. Thank you one and all for your participation in that project. It's been amazing with the private sector taking the lead on that. Also, I'd like to thank Betsy Greenwald and Sarah Perrin for what was a real fun time at that. I'd like to see it every other weekend. My waistline probably would not be too happy with that, but it was just a beautiful day, well done by a lot of folks that came into our community.
Food trucks.
Yes.
Food truck, right.
Yep, but Betsy and Sarah put this together very
was
well.
well done.
Yeah, and appreciate
Right
that.
outside my front door.
Yeah, that's right, because they blocked yours. And the only other thing I just want to mention, in the banner this morning, thanks to Christy, there was a note about the Bennington ACES program. Remember Richard Hatter, who came before the board not too long ago talking about the program? Well, he was recognized by the United States Tennis Association for this program. That program is just revisit that, provides about 300 underserved children with the opportunity to participate not only in tennis, but some academic activity, and also to help meet some dietary issues. The United States Tennis Association had this event the night of the U.S. Open down in New York City, and he was recognized for that activity, and that is another great local program. Participation is amazing, 300 future tennis players, plus I think even more important than that is their opportunity to get some academic tutoring and also some food guidance, nutritional guidance. So thanks to Richard and everyone else in that. That's all I have.
Where do you want to start? Are we going to get an update on the RFP for the town garages? Is that coming soon?
Yes, we, unfortunately, the staff that have been charged with reviewing those proposals have been out of the office. We haven't had the whole team together, so we hope to start that back up once again. We have received the proposals. We have notified those that we didn't feel met the criteria, and we simply haven't gotten into the detail of the others, and we are actually seeking some additional information from at least one of the folks who submitted a proposal.
Do we have the flexibility of reopening the RFP if we should elect?
I think we do, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to resolve those issues that we have and be able to present to you two proposals that will work, one for each property.
Okay. That will be done in open session?
Yes.
Okay. Is that going to be the next meeting?
I'm not sure we'll get to it by the next meeting, but we hope to have it done, I would hope, by late October.
The reason I'm saying that is because I've heard an expression of an interest that has not been participating in the RFP. And I'd hate to see that cast aside if the board does take on one of these other two. I just don't want to keep pushing this one down. So I think it's going to be a yes or no relative to one of those two. So what you can do, I really appreciate that.
We'll try to move it forward.
Can I just comment, just because I'm familiar with the process around reviewing the actual proposals. I know that at least one of those we've asked for information from the person or the entity that made the proposal, and we haven't received information back. I know that we've sent them a reminder, so I just wanted to say that unfortunately we're having some difficulty gathering that information. Once we have that, we'll take a proposal to the board. If we don't get it, then we'll certainly let you know that we think it's incomplete. But we want to give them an opportunity to respond.
Okay. Thank you. But to respond doesn't mean they have to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to do that. So, okay. Any others?
Just also busy week at the high school this week. It's homecoming week, spirit week, and doubleheader Friday, well, triple header. There's girls field hockey at 4 o'clock on on the field hockey field, on Spinelli is girls soccer at 4, and then the football game at 7. So people can come out and support the student athletes. That'd be great.
I'd also like to thank Ryan Hassett has been offering free movies on Wednesday nights all summer long at the Merchants Lot, and this Wednesday night is the last one. It's Breakfast at Tiffany's. I guess it's still going to be at the Merchants Lot. I'm not really sure, but if anyone wants to come, I guess Ryan is the person to ask. He owns Bringing You Vermont. So it's free movies.
Bundle up.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just echo boy, that food truck event was so wonderful, and I'm so hungry right now, but I had the most amazing Mediterranean food at that event, and the music was great, and it was really a wonderful event. I think it was mentioned, but I can't remember, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy meeting. There's going to be one at the Masonic Hall on Wednesday night from 6 to 8, if people are interested in seeing what the Southern Tier Comprehensive Economic Development, or SEDS, strategy is coming about. Also, I think at the last meeting we had said Bill Colvin was going to come to this meeting, and obviously he didn't, so it's not that we forgot about it, it's that we're planning to have him come back soon.
He'll be, actually, they're planning to come October 8th.
October 8th,
They had
okay.
some conflicts for this evening, so they weren't able to.
So we probably should mention that. The update just for the board, the purchasing policy group, we just haven't gotten very far, largely because of my distracted schedule. It's really on me at this point. Melissa's done what she should, and so I'll try to move that forward a little bit faster. And BCIC had a great event at Catamount Connections. The BCIC meeting was at Catamount Connections, and I had a chance to tour the facility, and it's really wonderful that there's a nice, safe space for parents with young kids from all walks of life to go and hang out and enjoy being together and get to know one another. And some of the programming they're offering is very wonderful for our community too. So it's an incredible effort, and I really hope that this board can be part of keeping that going after their grant runs out, because it feels to me like a very significant community glue that affects the very youngest and the parents of the very youngest, and I think it might be something that would be worth investing in from a long-term community health perspective. So it was a great event, though. That's it for me.
Great, thanks.
Nothing this week.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go into executive session in 5 minutes.